It is game week. Welcome in, everybody, to the Shelby County High School Football Show. I'm your host, Alec Etheridge, managing editor here at the Shelby County Reporter. We are broadcasting right here from Chelsea High School, which is going to play host to our first game of the week of the 2021 season. They're going to welcome 280 area rival Oak Mountain here to Chelsea on Friday night. That's been a fun battle to open the season the last several years. We're going to break that game down extensively and talk about what to expect from both of those teams heading into the 2021 season. A lot of high hopes for each one for different reasons, and we're going to talk a lot about that game, obviously, but a huge opening week of high school football across Shelby County. We've got 10 total teams playing on their home field between Thursday and Friday night. It's going to start with Vincent on Thursday night to kick off the season for Shelby County teams, and then we've got 9 teams playing at home on Friday night. Only 2 AACS teams will be hitting the road. That's Thompson traveling up to Oxford in another fun opener there. And then you've got the Oak Mountain Eagles coming right here to Chelsea for our game of the week in a fun county battle, 280 area rivalry. You've got Chick-fil-A hosting Spirit Week. This is one of the more fun ways to kick off the season right here between these two teams. But beyond that, we're going to talk about what to expect from all of our teams heading into the season. You look at what happened last year, a total of 5 teams make the second round of the playoffs. That's the first time since 1997, almost 25 years since we've seen that many teams in the second round of the playoffs. You look at 6 total teams that made the postseason last year. A lot of those teams have almost all their talent back going into this season as well. So there's a lot of high expectations out there for local Shelby County teams. You look at the preseason standings, the Thompson Warriors obviously going to be a team to watch. They're a top 5 team nationally in the country with the amount of recruits that they return, the amount of returning talent overall on both sides of the ball. Going to be one of the more entertaining teams to watch this season. Obviously, number 1 in the 7A classification this year. Then you look at the Briarwood Lions. They've made a huge leap going into their second season back in the 6A classification. Their first stint a few years ago didn't go so well, but last year you look at what they were able to accomplish in making the second round of the playoffs in the 6A classification. A strong regular season, and then to make it to the second round in 6A. There's a lot to be said about what's going on there at Briarwood and what they have back this season as well. So those two teams enter the season in the top 5 of their respective classifications, but beyond that, there's a lot of talent back this year across Shelby County. I look at some teams like Pelham, Montevallo, Helena, Oak Mountain, Chelsea. It goes on and on. You're going to see a lot of strong talent taking the field each week, and it's going to be one of the strongest seasons, I think, that we've ever seen here in Shelby County. A lot of big storylines to touch on, a lot of big games to kick off the season this Friday night, this Thursday night as well. So we're going to break all that down. We're just going to jump straight in and get to it, and we're going to start right here with our game of the week. It's fun to open the season no matter what, but to open a season against your rival, it's second to none. This is going to be a lot of fun here at Chelsea High School as the Oak Mountain Eagles come to town for what's been a great opening battle between these two teams for several years now. I say that, it's actually been a pretty lopsided series. You look at what Oak Mountain's been able to do. They have a classification advantage being in 7A compared to Chelsea in 6A, and the Eagles have won 8 of the 9 matchups between these two teams, including the last 4 in a row. And you look at the last 3 years, Oak Mountain's won this series by a combined score of 97-3 through those 3 matchups, and they've really just started to dominate this series. That said, I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think this is going to be a much more tightly contested game between these two teams. And you look at the storylines entering this matchup, and I'll tell you why. You look first, Oak Mountain changing coaches. They're making their first coaching change in 9 years. Chris Bell has departed for Scottsboro, entered the Tyler Crane era. He is coming from Central Phoenix City, where he had some success as a coordinator there. He's been a very strong assistant coach across the state, and you look at what he did as an assistant at Oak Mountain. He's familiar with the area, he knows the kids, and he knows the school. So that's going to help them, but he's also going to be changing some things up a little bit. He's going to coach with what he has as well, but then you look at what they've been doing for so long under Coach Bell. It was an option attack, really a triple option attack, where they took advantage of running the football, different schemes on the offensive line. And you've got a quarterback back in Evan Smith who's been used to running that system for 3 years. He's a 4-year starter, so that gives you an automatic benefit at the quarterback position with a leader of that stature. But you've got to get him on board and believing in this new style of offense, which I think is something that he can do. He's such a good leader, such a great athlete. He beats teams almost single-handedly at times throughout his last 3 years. So you know that he's got the ability, but we know that he's going to do a bunch of different things on the field. He could even be playing some on the defensive side of the ball as a commit to Northwestern as a defensive back. That wouldn't be something that surprises me either. But when you've got somebody like that to lead your offense, that's the kind of guy you want there to make those changes with, because you know that he's going to be able to get some of those other guys ready for some different situations. But that could lead to some early season struggles as they try to get everybody on board and bought into what should be a little bit of a new system. I expect this offense, I don't think they're going to change it completely. I do think you're going to see a shift. But you look at what they've been doing in the triple option, I think you're going to see a little bit more spread out, but you're going to still see a lot of running, taking advantage of what Smith can do at the quarterback position. That said, they're going to throw the ball more this year alone probably than they have the last 3 years combined with Smith at the helm. So that's going to be an adjustment that you have to watch for early in this matchup between these two teams. Now, I say that, you look at the other side of the ball, Chelsea's got a starting quarterback returning for the first time under head coach Dustin Goodwin, and that's got this team excited. The buzz is surrounding the Hornets right now because of that, and you look at Hayden Garrison and what he was able to do last season. Those first few games a season ago, Chelsea scored 3 or less in 3 of their first 4 games. In steps Garrison. He was able to help Chelsea scored 28, I believe, in his first game against Pelham. And then the rest of the way, they averaged more than 30 points in their final 5 games of the season. So a strong showing from him in the second half of the season. Now he's back, and you've got some good talent to throw to. You look at a receiver like Thomas Simpson. You look at Cooper Griffin, what he's able to do out of a tight end position, a guy that understands the offense as a backup quarterback as well. So you look at the offenses, you're going to have an Oak Mountain team looking to make some changes on that side of the ball, and you're going to have a Chelsea team that's not making changes and kind of understands the system a little bit better, possibly better than they have since Goodwin got here, who's kind of an offensive-minded head coach and likes to tinker around with different things. So now this offense kind of understands that and knows what to expect going into the season. So you look at that, and then you turn over to the defensive side of the ball. That's where you've got to look at some different things and figure out who's going to have the edge on that side of the ball. I do think that both of these defenses are still going to be talented, but they both lose a lot of production as well. Oak Mountain losing a lot up front on the defensive line. Gavin Nelson back will help, but then you look at Chelsea and their defense, they lose a ton in the secondary. There are a few guys back that are going to help there in the front 7, but overall both defenses losing some talent. So who's going to be able to come out in this first game and handle some of those different challenges the best? That's who's going to win this matchup. I don't see this one being a rout like we've seen the last 3 years. I see this one being much more of a 2-score 10-point game, somewhere along that range. Now, if Oak Mountain's able to come out and run their offense to perfection under Crane, then that could lead to a different storyline. But I do think you're going to see some early season adjustments and struggles there, trying to get that thing in the first game of the season, running a new system under a new head coach. How do you handle facing the adversity when it does come your way? That's going to be the key. Helps that they've got Smith at quarterback, but there's just so much change that you have to wrap your mind around, and it's the first time that you're doing it in live action against another team aside from your own defense. So that, I think, is the biggest key in this game, how Oak Mountain handles those changes. If they handle them well and there's very little drop-off, you're going to see a team come out that plays extremely well and is a team that, like last year, made the second round of the playoffs. They finished 7-5. Got off to their first 4-0 start in school history, 6-1 through their first 7. They showed what's possible at Oak Mountain last year. If they come out, handle those changes well this year, numbers are starting to grow with Crane there. as the head coach. So if they handle those changes well, this is a team that can make another deep run. I also think Chelsea's going to be drastically improved this year. I think it could be their best season under Goodwin as the head coach because of what they have back on the offensive side of the ball. That's what they've been missing. The defense has played well several years in a row now. They're just on the field so much of the game. Now you've got an offense that may be able to move the ball, keep them off the field and rested from a defensive standpoint. If that happens, this is a team that's going to put up some numbers this year. We saw it in the second half of last season, and I think you're going to see it earlier this season. So all that said, I think you're going to have an Oak Mountain team that's got a lot of potential this year, and we're going to see what they show in this first game as far as what's possible. And you've got a Chelsea team with a lot of potential this season as well. I think you're going to see a tight battle with two teams that want to come out and prove themselves in this opener. That said, I think Oak Mountain's going to win a tight battle. That's nothing to hang your head on if you're a Chelsea fan or player, simply because this game's been such a rout for 3 years now. I think if you see a tight battle, that actually is something, even if you lose, that's something that Chelsea has to build off of with what can happen this year. I think that there's a strong chance they are back in the postseason, possibly even a strong chance of a top 2 or 3 finish if that offense does live up to the hype. Nonetheless, going to be a fantastic and fun night out here at Chelsea High School. I will be here. We'll have our Facebook Live pregame show from this game as well, breaking down that matchup and all the other matchups this Friday night. It's going to be an incredible football game, incredible atmosphere, and I can't wait to see you there. Now we'll go down classification by classification, break down all of this Friday's matchups, try to give you a little bit of a preseason preview of what you can expect from each of our county teams heading into the season. And we got to start in 7A with the defending Class 7A state champions, the Thompson Warriors, and what they were able to do last year. A team that won the state championship season prior in 2019 as well. Come into 2020, COVID-19, all these complications surrounding just football in general, and the Thompson Warriors didn't waver. They finished a perfect 10-0 in the regular season, go on to put together a perfect postseason for a 14-0 season. Just the second time in school history, first time since their 1982 state championship team that they finished the season perfect, and it didn't come without some trials and tribulations there in the state championship game. What a fantastic night that was there in Bryant-Denny Stadium. The Warriors able to overcome a late deficit, 2-score deficit in the final 30 seconds. They block a punt, score a touchdown there, then they get an onside kick, and Trevor Hardy kicks the game-winning field goal after struggling admittedly earlier in the game, but he got redemption. Thompson wins the state championship, goes wild, and they now enter the season as the 2-time defending Class 7A state champions. And guess what? They're probably more talented this year than they've possibly ever been. You look at what this team has back on both sides of the ball. We'll start offensively with what they're going to take into this season opener against Oxford. They bring back the Class 7A back of the year, Connor Harrell, quarterback, who threw for more than 3,400 yards and 40 touchdowns last year. He's back at quarterback. You do lose a little bit at running back and receiver. Jarrett Crockett, the leading rusher, is gone. He was one of the top running backs in the state last year. Then you also lose receivers in J.B. Mitchell, the team's leading receiver. You lose Trey Roberson, and you lose Sam Reynolds as well. But you got a ton of talent back around those guys that have departed. You look at the offensive side, you return Ryan Pepins, you get guys in like Jalen Ward, Justin Pegues, David Moultrie. You got all this talent still there on that side, and then you look at Brandon Franklin at running back. He's a guy that was expected to make a big splash as a sophomore. He's now a senior. He's battled some injury the first couple of seasons and also had to sit behind Crockett and what they've had previously at the running back position. But you got all that talent back. If the offensive line shores up and is strong, they are replacing a couple of starters there. But this offense is so talented. We know Harrell's really good at extending plays on the offensive side. I don't expect them to skip a beat from the team that averaged more than 40 points per game a season ago. So going to be strong offensively, but then you look at what they've got on the defensive side of the football. They've got 3 top 15 recruits on that side of the ball. Peter Woods and Tony Mitchell, 2 guys that are in the top 15 of next year's class. Peter Woods, defensive end there, is one of the top players in the country. A lot of recruiting sites have him ranked number 1 overall. And then you throw in Jeremiah Alexander, who's been a starter there for 4 years at kind of a weak side linebacker position, a defensive end linebacker hybrid kind of guy who can get in the backfield and wreak havoc when he wants to. He is so talented and was the player of the year in Shelby County last year. And those are just the top 15 recruits. You look beyond that, you've got guys like Nate Riddle back, you've got Jax Van Zant back, you've got Traquan Fagans in from Oxford, which should add to this matchup against the Yellow Jackets in the opener. Those are all guys that are talented across the state. You throw in an Amon Lane, who's gotten several Division I offers. This team is loaded top to bottom on both sides of the ball. Depth is still something that they're looking for, but there's a lot of guys that weren't talked about in the preseason that are also talented, that are going to be those number 2s that are going to be ready to step in too. So this team's loaded. They deserve to be a top 5 team in the country. They definitely deserve to be the number 1 team in the state, and anything short of a state championship would not be a successful season for the Warriors this year, simply because of what they do have back. Now to the opener this week. They're taking on Oxford for the second week or season in a row. Last year, this was a game that was a battle of defending state champions. This year, you've got Thompson as the 2-time defending champs, and you've got Oxford, who fell in the 3rd round of the playoffs last year, and they're entering a new era under head coach Sam Adams. Adams was a coach at Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa. He's also a previous assistant at Spain Park High School and has had success at several different stops throughout the state, but now he's taking on arguably one of the best teams in the country in his first game as the Yellow Jackets head coach. So it's going to be interesting to watch this battle, and Oxford's still talented. This is a team that's going to make some noise in the 6A classification. They are going to be a hardworking team, but you've got a lot of talent to match up with, and we said it all year last year. This is a Thompson team that you look at what they put on the field each week at every position, especially if you're an opposing defense. You've got to have somebody that can guard every position. And at the high school level, that's just difficult to do. It's tough to have a shutdown corner on both sides of the field, a shutdown safety or two, linebackers that can get into the backfield or can stop the run, and a defensive line that can penetrate one of the best offensive lines in the state. It's tough to put that on the field at the high school level. So the best team suited to guard Thompson's offense is going to be Thompson's defense, and that's not going to happen. So you look at what this team's able to do on the offensive side. They're going to still average at least 35 points a game, if not upwards of 40. And then you look at what the defense can do. It's going to be tough for any team to be able to beat Thompson this year. And in the opener, under a new head coach, it's tough for me to see Oxford pulling off the upset in week 1. Now, there are a lot of expectations on Thompson's shoulders. How they handle those expectations will obviously be key. You could go in, have that pressure on your shoulders, and come out flat in this first game. Last year, they did struggle early, and the defense didn't play well at all in that first game. But ultimately, the offense scored more than 50 points to go on to win that game by more than 20. So I expect Thompson to get off to a strong start this week. Should have a pretty easy couple of first few weeks to the season. But in this one, I expect Thompson to roll, get off to a 1-0 start to the 2021 season. Spain Park's going to enter this season with a few question marks, really on both sides of the ball. And a few months ago, this could have been a team that would have been vying for a state championship with what they had coming back offensively, but they do lose some of that talent to transfers. I know that's a sore subject among many schools in the state, but you look at what they did lose. Bennett Meredith, the starting quarterback last year, has gone to Hoover, and then you lose David Moultrie, Jalen Ward, Justin Pegues to Thompson, and then you also lose your star defender in the secondary to Pinson Valley. So this is a team that's lost a few guys to transfer, which is difficult to say because most teams are looking to replace guys that have graduated, and Spain Park's replacing the majority of their talent that would have made them a state championship contender this year to the transfer situation. So that's a difficult thing for the Jags to enter this season. That said, this is a team that's probably going to use that as fuel, especially taking on Thompson this year. I imagine that's going to be a pretty heated rivalry between those two teams. But you look beyond that at what the Jags are going to have and do this year. Obviously, coming off a season in which they finished 4-6 last year, won their first 2 games, won their last 2 games as well, lost the 6 in between to finish 4-6, missed out on the postseason yet again. Currently in the midst of their longest postseason drought, dating back to 2017. And this is a team under head coach Sean Rainey who has had success. They've been to a state championship. They've beaten Hoover for the first time in school history and did it twice in the same year. So we obviously know that the Jags can and have the potential to be one of the state's best teams. It's a matter of them focusing this year and turning any motivation they can into getting back there. And the biggest key to doing that's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. This is a team, when they've had their best seasons under Rainey, that's been extremely strong on the defensive side. And there's going to be some question marks. They do have a lot of talent back. They have some key pieces at every position on the defense to make this year's defense one of the best that they've had in several years. But you're going to have that, say, third guy on the defensive line or fourth guy on the defensive line, and then one more at defensive back and linebacker as well that are going to have to step up and prove themselves for the defense to be as good as it needs to be. And now, look, this is a defense that's given up 36 or more per game each of the last 2 years, and this was one a few years ago that was giving up 20 or less just seemingly every year. So that shows where the drastic turn has gone. Last year, if this team had one of those talented defenses that they had in previous years, it could have been a state championship team with what they had on the offensive side of the football. So now, this year, you've got a change in style on the offensive side that could help with that. Evan Smallwood stepping in at quarterback, Zamir Ferris at running back. Those are 2 talented guys that can do some different things athletically as far as running the football, and Smallwood's really improving on his passing ability as well. So you look at what those 2 can do. You got a strong returning cast up front on the offensive line. This is going to be a team that's going to, not sure what kind of style they're going to run as far as possibly an option attack, but you're going to see them spread the ball a lot that way. I think you're going to see, if you see them spread the ball out as far as a spread offense, it's going to be more of an option attack with a lot of running and different looks from that regard. I'm not sure that they're going to line up under center and do a lot of what Oak Mountain has done previously, but it could look something similar to that. And that's going to make them difficult to prepare for just because it is a different style than what a lot of teams see on a weekly basis. What it also does is help sustain some longer drives, and it helps get the defense some rest, which is what they struggled with last year. As good as the offense was a season ago, they scored quick or they went 3 and out. There was no in-between, which led to the defense being on the field a lot of the games. So that's going to be a key this year. Offense has got to sustain some drives, and the defense has got to improve. And you look at this opener against Huntsville on Friday night. They're going to get this game on their home field this year. It's a game they won 52-21 last year. This could be a game where Spain Park gains a lot of confidence with what they are trying to do, because they should enter the game as a favorite. They should win this matchup. It's a matter of how they fare the weeks following this. So you want to gain some confidence in this matchup, which I think they can easily do. I expect Spain Park to start the season 1-0. Then they got the test. They got Briarwood, number 5 in 6A. The week after, they've got Hewitt, Trussville, and Thompson the 2 weeks after that. So you really got to win this game, or there's a strong possibility that you're going to be sitting at 0-4 through 4 games, which is, it's tough to bounce back from a situation like that. If they win this one and then they can somehow pull off the upset against Briarwood, who they did beat a season ago 21-14, then you've got a team sitting at 2-0 with 2 good wins, and that could build this confidence for the Jags throughout the rest of the season, especially going into those 2 big matchups with Hewitt and Thompson. So a big week for the Jags to open the season. Need to look for them to gain some confidence here in week 1. Now we get to a team that I've been extremely excited about through the offseason, as many of you have read in some of my stories, some of my tweets. The Pelham Panthers this year are going to be a team that you want to keep your eye on. This is a team that last year won their 3rd region championship in school history. They finished the season 8-3. overall. And it was an impressive stretch that they were able to put together. And now you look at what they have returning this season. I would say they have close to 90% of starters back on this year's team. You look at what they get back on the offensive side. Will Langford back at the quarterback position. Then you look at running back Gabe Gamble. You will lose Dylan Peterson, who's a 1,000-yard back. But to have Gabe Gamble back, a guy that's been starting for 2 years now, is huge for the Panthers at the running back position. And then you've got 3 receivers that are returning as well. Darius Copeland, Christian Pritchett, Jake Fox all have shown the potential to have big breakout games. You're going to see a lot from each of those guys. You're going to see a lot from Gamble, and you're going to see a lot from Will at the quarterback position as well. It's a team that's going to be able to run the ball well, and Langford's arm has gotten even better. This is a team that has shown a lot of promise in the passing game as well, which was a little inconsistent despite how talented Will Langford was a season ago. This offense is going to be loaded, and then on the defensive side, you've also got starters back at every single position on that side of the ball. You look at the offensive line as well. 3 of 5 back on the offensive line, 4 back on the defensive line, 4 back at linebacker, 3 back in the secondary with starting experience. And this is a team that really hasn't gotten a ton of preseason hype aside from what I've been saying so far. And now it's time for them to live up and back me up on what I've been saying so far with my predictions and previews this season. This is a team that should be vying for a deep run in the postseason. They're hungry, and Tom Causey's proved what he can do as a head coach at other stops. He's been building this Pelham program up, and now he's finally got the depth and the returning starters that he needs to put together his best season ever at Pelham. And you look at what they did last year, obviously a historic season, 8-3, but to have just about everybody back that you need to make a special run, this is a team that should repeat as region champions. It is a difficult region, and other teams are going to be improved, and you will have to play Helena this year, which that game was canceled or forfeited by the Huskies last year due to COVID-19, and they ended up finishing second in the region after winning the region title 2 years ago. So that's going to be a fun battle this year, and it's a difficult region. But this is a team that is loaded top to bottom, coming off a confidence-boosting region championship last year. I expect Pelham to be a team that honestly could vie for a 6A state title this year because of that returning talent that they do have. And this opener against Mortimer Jordan, it's a game that Pelham won 28-21 last year. Mortimer Jordan's a talented team. They were coming off a deep run in the playoffs in 5A the year before. But this is a team that was probably a little bit underwhelming of an experience last year for Pelham. That said, it was the first game for Langford as the quarterback. They improved every week after that on the offensive side of the ball. I expect them to come out this year with what they have returning and kind of try to make a statement early in the season that they're a team to watch out for. I do think it can still be a tight battle, but I see it being more 35-21 than 28-21. So about a 14-point difference between these two teams, just simply based on what Pelham has back coming off such a confidence boost last year. Now, I say that Pelham did lose their last 2 games by 2 points. They lost 28-21 to Homewood, and then they lost by 2 points in the first round of the playoffs, too, to cut the season shorter than they were probably expecting. I think that's something that adds even more to this year's team. I think they are hungry, determined, and ready to really discount those 2 games from last year and show that they are a better team than how they finished a season ago. So you've got a team with a ton of talent back off a region championship for just the 3rd time in school history, first time since 2007, and one that's hungry to prove themselves after a heartbreaking end to last season. Watch out for this Pelham team in 2021. It's year 4 of the Richie Busby era at Helena High School, and the Huskies have put together a strong run in his first 3 seasons. The last 2 years alone, this is a team that won the region championship 2 years ago. Last year, they finished runner-up in the region, and that was impressive. This is a team that didn't play for 3 consecutive weeks of the season due to COVID-19. They had to forfeit the game against Pelham, which ultimately made the difference in the region standings between 1 and 2. Then they had to forfeit the week after against McAdory before coming back and picking up a forfeit win against Chilton County. So 3 consecutive weeks in the middle of the season that they were off the field, started the year 1-3 overall, but then they bounced back. What a finish to the year last year for them to earn the 2 seed out of the region, get home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs, and they ultimately made it to the second round of the postseason. So this is a Helena team off back-to-back top 2 finishes in the region, and they're going to be hungry. After last year coming up that 1 game short against Pelham, obviously they're going to have that game circled, a fun rivalry there between those 2 teams. But this is a team, they replace a lot of talent, but they've got some young up-and-coming players, possibly the most talent they've had in their younger classes. And you look at that going into this season and what they're going to try to accomplish. You got a lot of athletic players in those classes, and you've got a group that really wants to prove themselves after back-to-back top 2 finishes in the region. So you look at what they're going to have entering this season. They get a returning quarterback in Mac Turner. That's going to help them immensely on the offensive side of the ball. That said, they do lose starting running backs Marquise Johnson and Kobe Hughes. Both of those guys have played a ton of minutes the last 2 years. Kobe Hughes had the big year last year. Johnson had the big year the year before, and they really complemented each other well. And in a Richie Busby offense, they want to run the ball, be physical, and really take a toll on defenses early in games so that they can come back in the second half and really just pound it away and put the game away. And that's something they're not going to have entering the season. They don't know. There's a lot of mystery there at the running back position. That said, there's a lot of potential there as well. And when you run that style of offense, that kind of helps some of those younger guys get used to things, because you're going to have so many that can keep each other fresh. You're going to go into these games with confidence, knowing you're going to get the carries, and it just boils down to which one is going to have a big night on any given night. So I expect Helena to continue to be able to do what they've done the last several years, and a lot of that's going to rest on what they have back on the defensive side of the ball. The offense is going to have a lot of opportunity because of what they returned defensively, and we know that this is a very well-coached defense, especially in the second half of games. But you look at what they've got back in Iceberg Cave, Joseph Roberto, Kyle Tolbert, Kason Bustamino, Jackson Snyder, Joel Logan, all those guys at different positions along the defense. Joel Logan, a big guy on the defensive line that's going to play a big role. And then you've got Roberto and Cave there at linebacker, 2 of the best returning linebackers in the county this season. So that front seven is going to be talented. The back end of the defense going to be talented as well. You look beyond that at what they have been doing the last several years. This is a team that starts a little bit slow, really on both sides of the ball. They've put themselves in some difficult situations, and last year it led to some difficult games early in the year. They couldn't overcome those early deficits. Now in the second half of the season, they were a little bit more fresh after those 3 weeks in a row where they didn't play, and they came out and they came back against just about every team that they played in the second half to make the postseason. Going into this year, though, this is a team that wants to start faster on the defensive side of the ball so that they aren't having to overcome those 20-point halftime deficits, so 17-point halftime deficits, because what they've been doing in the second half, the defense has been shutting out teams and the offense has been coming back. So even if you have a 0-0 game with the defense playing well in the first half, you trust your offense in the second half to come back and make that a 21-0 kind of game, simply because of what they can do on the defensive side of the football. So you've got to have faith. If you're the defense starting games this season, you've got to put together a first half where you give up 10 points or less, and then the sky's the limit because of what we've seen from them in the past and the toll that they take on teams through their physicality. Now, in this opening game, it's really not going to matter a whole lot. They're taking on a 4A Dallas County team that really struggled last year. Helena won this game 43-0 a season ago. This year, it's an opportunity for the Huskies to get a lot of those guys, a lot of those young playmakers that are going to be stepping into key roles. They're going to have a chance to really gain some experience, and a lot of guys deep into the roster as well in this matchup, which will prepare them for a difficult stretch after that. But this is a Helena team coached under Richie Busby that's been so successful the last 4 years in turning things around I expect another strong season from them this year, and I expect that to start with an opening victory against Dallas County. It's a new era at Calera High School. Jason Hamlin takes over as head coach in the offseason, takes over for Trey Simpson, who's now in an athletic administrative role at Thompson High School. And it's the third time in the last 5 seasons that the Eagles are going to have to change head coaches. And this is a team that just keeps trying to get over the hump, and it's been difficult to build that consistency because of the coaching changes and because of their jump into the 6A classification. That said, this is a team that was so close a season ago. Now, since they entered the 6A classification 3 years ago, they've won 1 game each of those 3 seasons on the football field. Now, last year, this is a team that won 3 games overall, but 2 of those wins were forfeits. Now, they may have ended up winning those games regardless, but on head-to-head matchups, they have only won 1 game each of the last 3 seasons. Last year, though, they get those 2 forfeit wins, games they likely could have won, and then you look at what they did in some of their losses a season ago as well. There were 4 games that they lost by 8 points or less. So if you throw in those 4 games and they win those, this is a 7-win team last year that's likely in the playoffs, and those were against some good teams in a difficult region and a difficult non-region schedule. So going into week 1, I think this is the biggest game of the year against Demopolis. You've got Hamlin taking over as the head coach, the guy that really is going to get the most out of these kids. He's been at several stops throughout his career as an assistant, looking at Thompson, looking at Spain Park, what he's been able to do at McAdory previously as an assistant coach and defensive coordinator. He knows how to get the most out of his guys. I expect him to have a strong season this year, but you've got to get them to believe, and you've got to do it early in the season, and that starts this week with Demopolis. This is a team, used to be a region rival of Calera, but the last couple of years, they've really finally shown that they can compete with them. Now, this is a 5A Demopolis team, so when you move up to 6A, you expect to be a team that's beating 5A teams, and it just hasn't happened yet. And this is a team that previously, when they were region rivals, Demopolis won these games pretty handily. But the last 2 years, this is a matchup that has been lost by a combined 6 points by Calera. Last year's game, a 2-point loss, a game that they narrowly won, but a missed field goal kept that from being a tie game at one point, and instead led to a 14-12 loss at the end of the night. So this year, week 1, if they can win that game, that goes such a long way just because they haven't done it. You win that one against a team that you've struggled against, team that you've come so close against in previous years, then you gain that confidence right off the bat, and you say, this is something we haven't been able to do here at Calera. We've got a new head coach. We can do it now. So if you win this week 1 matchup against Demopolis, which I think that there is a possibility of them doing. Now, it's always interesting going into the year under a new head coach, but this is a Calera team that's so athletic every year. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the state, and you've got so much talent that's moving in, that lives there. You've got a lot of athletes every year on that football field, and now it's just a matter of them coming together and believing in one another. And I think head coach Jason Hamlin is going to get them to do that, but you look at what they've got entering the season, the big key is what can they do on the offensive side. You've got Kobe Prentice, one of the best and fastest players in the state at receiver, and you got to find a way to get him the football, whether it be in space to let him make some plays or whether it be down the field. And that's where the question mark of the quarterback comes into play. They will be replacing a quarterback. Tyler Nelson is now at Gardendale. So finding that right fit at that position is going to be huge for what Calera is able to do on the offensive side of the ball. That said, they've got 2 returning running backs in Chris Cotton and Daniel Carmona. Those 2 guys are what's going to make this offense roll. This is an offense with those 2 that can churn some yards and churn some clock on the offensive side of the ball, keep games a little bit lower scoring, take a lot of time off the clock, and really, kind of like Helena, who we just talked about, take a physical toll on defenses so that in the second half you've worn them down and you can put together whatever really you need to because those defenses are tired. So that's going to be a huge key, is those two guys returning as running backs this season. And then if they can find that one key piece at quarterback who can find Kobe Prentice and other receivers down the field, then you've got an offense that could make a lot of noise this year. Obviously, the offensive line is going to have to replace a few players too, and that's always going to be key in how successful you are. But the defense is going to have to step up as well. Last year they showed promise. That's why they were in so many games, but the offense just couldn't sustain very much on a consistent basis, which led to the defense just physically drained at the end of the night. So this year they're going to have to be able to sustain those drives. And against Demopolis, they're a physical, well-coached 5A team that's going to come out, and they're not going to back down from a fight. So week one, if you can show that defense is ready to go, if you can find any resemblance of a passing game to pair with what they have at running back, you're going to have a strong chance to win, and that builds the confidence. This is a team that could make a lot of noise throughout the season if those things kind of coincide with one another. So I'll be looking to see how that quarterback play shapes up, who the starter is in week one. That'll determine a lot of Calera's success this season, obviously the defense as well. But expect that running game between Cotton and Carmona to really make a difference in this matchup. I think that's what keeps them in this game. Don't be surprised if Calera pulls off that first win against Demopolis in school history. The expectations are high at Briarwood this season, and rightfully so. Matthew Forster's done an incredible job since taking over for Fred Yancey as the head coach, and he's continued to do it with what they've done well for so long on the defensive side of the ball. A former All-State linebacker there for Briarwood. He has been a defensive coordinator before taking over as the head coach, and the defense has continued to be lights out so far in his tenure. That said, this year it could be the offense that we're all talking about at the end of the season. They return Christopher Vizina, they return Luke Rebels, and they actually have starters back on the offensive line. Normally, a team that's churning out offensive linemen has senior after senior starting on that side of the or on the offensive line. This year they've got that, but they've also got a couple of guys back, which has Vizina and Rebels licking their chops in the backfield. Vizina last year, more than 2,000 all-purpose yards, close to 2,000 yards passing, had an additional 200 yards rushing. Rebels was a guy that ran for more than 1,100 yards and then had 500 yards receiving as well. So this is an offense between those two guys with a strong offensive line that's already going to be talented. The only question mark on that side of the ball will be the receiver position. Can they find that receiver to step up? Last year it started to come along. It struggled the last few years. Last year they started to see it from a couple of different guys, particularly Carson Donnelly. Vizina found him a lot down the stretch, and this is a team that went on to finish 8-3 in their first year back in the 6A classification and made it to the second round of the playoffs because of what they were able to do, and that was with Vizina as still a sophomore. Now you've got him as a junior with 2 years of starting experience. He's going to be ready, and he understands the offense and what needs to be done to find a lot of that talent at the receiver position. So having a guy step up there is what takes this team from being maybe a region championship and first or second round team to a team that could vie for a state championship as the number 5 team in Class 6A heading into the season. So that one position could make all the difference in the world. Obviously, the defense has to continue playing well, and they are replacing a ton of talent. You look just at the linebacker position, they're going to lose guys like Tyler Wall, like Parker Hudson, Alistair Harris, who was a guy that switched between the secondary and linebacker. They also lose Cal Higdon in the secondary as well. So replacing really 90% of their tackles from a season ago. But you look at what this team has done every year. When they lose talent, they replace it. This is a defense that has given up 15.8 points per game or less every year since 2015, and they've given up more than 20 points per game just 3 times in the last 28 years. Those are remarkable numbers. So it's hard to see, even with replacing that talent, this defense giving up more than 20 points per game this year. And with what they have back on the offensive side of the ball, this is a team that should average close to 28 or more points per game on the offensive side of the football. So you look at those two things, this is a team that's going to be scary if everything does play out like we expect it to. I expect them to win the region championship this year. They finished runner-up to Mountain Brook last year, which made their playoff trek a little bit more difficult with a second-round matchup against Oxford where they lost. I expect them to win the region championship this year and make a little bit more of a run in the postseason. It's going to start with a tough test. It is a 4A team in Madison Academy, a team that finished 9-0, though, last year in the regular season and 10-1 overall as they made it to the second round of the playoffs. So one of the best teams in the 4A classification. They are a physical group. They are well coached. They will come in ready to roll in this matchup as well. It was canceled last year, so they will be playing it this season. Expect it to be a lot of fun between two teams that hope to vie for state championships in their respective classifications. Not going to be an easy test by any means from Briarwood, but having that classification advantage with what they have back, especially on that offensive side, should be what makes the difference. What a remarkable first year for head coach Blake Boren at Montevallo as he got the Bulldogs to the second round of the postseason last year, finished 7-5 overall, and that came after an 0-4 start to the season. So this is a team that really bounced back, made a strong run in the second half of the season to get the 3 seed out of the region and make it to the playoffs as they went on to upset St. James 27-21 in the opening round of the postseason last year. They went on to fall to the eventual state champions handily, 42-13 in the second round. So they played some of the toughest teams in the state last year, just looking in their own region, Bibb County and American Christian, and then the eventual 4A state championship winner in Handley. So this is a team that last year took on the best teams in the state. They showed some promise against those teams, won the games that they were supposed to win, and now this year they enter the season second year under Boren with experience. Last year they were replacing 90% of their offensive talent. This year they get the majority of their guys back on both sides of the ball. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what they're able to put out there after such a successful year a season ago. One of the biggest storylines entering the year will obviously be what they do at quarterback, replacing the starter from last year. They're going to move the team's best player, best overall athlete, Kyle Cottingham, who was an all-state defensive back player, may still play some at that position this year. He was also a receiver a season ago. Now he's going to step in as the starting quarterback this year, and how he handles that transition could be key. But from what I'm hearing, it's going to fit in well with what Boren likes to do with his offenses. Cottingham's an athletic playmaker who can do a lot of things with his feet. We've seen a lot of video in the offseason of what he can do with his arm as well, really improving there as a passer, which gives this team so much potential with what they have back on the offensive side of the ball. But you look at some of the talent that is returning. Cam Goins, going to be a guy, he'll probably play on both sides of the ball, but big-time threat at receiver. You've got back Dylan Campbell and Cole Dennis, guys that can play on both sides of the line that have a couple of years of returning experience. Jamion Prentice, several others that return as well. All of these guys have the potential for big seasons. They've got a year under their belt against some of the best teams in the state. They saw what it took to get to the playoffs last year, and now they know what it's going to take again this season. Now they're going to open with Marbury this Friday night. This is a game that was canceled last year due to COVID-19, was one of the forfeit losses for the Bulldogs a season ago. This year, they're going to hope to use that to their advantage, be hungry going into this game, know that last year they weren't getting to play this game. This year, they have the chance to open 1-0 after starting 0-1 a season ago. Now, Marbury does have a classification advantage. This is a 5A team that finished 6-5 last year. This is a team that was very average in the 5A classification. Montevallo was maybe just above average in the 4A classification. So which team's going to return the most is going to be the key question. How Marbury comes into this season, how Montevallo follows up last year. I do think the second half of last season with those guys started to gain so much experience. That's something that's going to pay off going into this matchup. I fully expect Montevallo to come out ready to roll in this matchup. Last year, if these two teams faced early in the season in that opener, Montevallo probably would have lost that game, but if they would have played each other at the end of the season last year, I think Montevallo would have had a better chance to at least win. This year, I think it's the same case going in to that first game. I think you're going to see a very tight battle between these two teams. If they were both 4A teams, I would expect Montevallo to win, but that classification advantage is the only hesitancy that I have with picking the Bulldogs in the opener. I think this could come down to the final minute. Now, I will say at the end of last year, we saw Montevallo win a lot of incredibly exciting games in the final couple of minutes. They put together some remarkable comebacks. They were able to make some big plays in the second half to win football games. If that carries over into this season, I think that they will win this opener, but we've got to see what they can do in that first game. Do they have that same kind of confidence and edge to them going into this year? But, hey, it's year 2 under Boren. He's got a year of experience with these guys. He knows how to coach them now, and he showed that he knew how to coach them in year 1. I expect an even better team this year that could vie for one of those top 2 spots in their region. The Vincent Yellow Jackets heading into year 4 under head coach Lucas Weatherford, and this is a Vincent team that's going to be hungry out of the gate to prove themselves. This is a team in the offseason built a new weight room and facility there at the school. It looks awesome. It's made those kids feel a little bit more important maybe, but also is just helping the program overall build some excitement. You've got more kids out for the team, and you've got Weatherford, who's been trying to build some consistency there at Vincent. Now, last year, it's a team out of the gate had to forfeit their first 3 games due to COVID-19. This year, not only will they be playing in week 1, they'll be playing as the first team to take the field in Shelby County and one of the first in the state as they take on Winterboro this Thursday night. And what's a huge game, in my opinion, for the Jackets. This is a team that finished 3-7 last year with those 3 forfeit losses. And those first 3 games and this year's first 3 games are games that were really toss-ups. They could have won all 3 of those games. So you take their record from 3-7 to 6-4 at that point. So this is a team that knows the opportunity is there heading into the season to build some confidence early in the year. And now they get to start with Winterboro. This is a 1A team in Winterboro, but it's a team that finished 9-2 a season ago in the 1A classification. So that said, that's going to make it a tight battle because this is a good 1A team. Vincent still got a lot to prove at the 2A level, but they've got some talent back, and this is a team that's going to be fun to watch this year in the 2A classification, a team that should battle for a playoff spot this year. They were close last year. They've been close under Weatherford. I think that this is a team that can do it. You look at what they have back at quarterback. Blake Ollum's back to lead the offense at that position. Got a lot of time last year. He split time at the position a season ago. He's the full-on starter this year. I think he's going to be confident going into the year. You've got a lot of other guys back. Jamari Lawson, a running back, an athlete who can do a lot on the offensive side as well. And a lot of the other talent back at many different positions throughout the team. This is a Vincent team that's going to be hungry. They've got more talent and depth than they've probably had overall in a while. They may not have that one guy like a Tay McGregor who's going to stand out and do just everything that they need him to do, but they've got a bunch of guys that can step up and play for each other, and that's what they've been trying to build, a team that believes in one another, is more than just about themselves, and I think you're going to see that in the culture that Weatherford has built this season. It's going to be a tight opener here against Winterboro, and it really will, I think, tell us if Vincent has turned the page or not. If they come out and compete for a quarter or two and then get blown off the field in the second half, then, it might be much of the same. But if they're able to come out, compete through those first 3 quarters, have a chance to win in the fourth quarter, that could make a huge difference in what they're able to do throughout the rest of the season. So a lot rides on this game, in my opinion. Obviously not a region game, doesn't matter for their postseason hopes, but it's important to get off to that positive start. You've been building the confidence in the offseason. You got to continue that trend in the first week of the season as well. The final games we'll talk about, they happen in the AISA and the ACSC. Evangel will be the team that's playing their second game of the season. The Lightning opened last week, 8-man action against the defending Tennessee State champions as they won that game going away there in the second half to start the season 1-0 under head coach Tim Smith, who was in the hospital a week earlier battling COVID-19, ended up getting back with the team to coach that game and that win to open the season 1-0. They take on Meadowview this week, team they beat 40-6 last year. Meadowview winless a season ago. It is an 11-man game now, so you do have that adjustment for the Yellow Jacket or for the Lightning going in to this matchup. But I think this is a team, you win 40-6 last year. They're a very physical group this year with experience back. I think that they will handle that one as well. Coosa Valley Rebels, they are returning to action this Friday night. They will take on Hooper Academy, and they are under new leadership. Vince DiLorenzo has returned, led Coosa Valley to the state championship in 2010 before moving over to Georgia to coach there for several years. Now he returns, taking on a Hooper team that Coosa Valley lost to 45-6 last year. Now they will be, I think, better coached overall going into this game, but that's a huge difference to overtake going into the season. I think you'll see a more competitive game. Coosa Valley got a lot to prove, though, in year one under DiLorenzo as he tries to get that team back to a state championship caliber group. Cornerstone, they'll be taking on Southern Prep at home this Friday night. That's going to be another big matchup early in the season for a team to show that they kind of turned things around. Cornerstone lost last year 28-12. That was their closest loss of the season outside of a win against Coosa Valley. They didn't score more than 6 points in any other game aside from the 12 that they scored in a 28-12 loss to Southern Prep last year. So a big game to start the season. Should have a chance in that one to at least win, keep it close, and have a chance late to win that football game. So we'll see how those three teams handle this opening week, or two teams in the AISA handled the opening week, and how Evangel handles their 11-man game in week 2. Well, that's going to do it for the week 1 show here from Chelsea High School. What an amazing time it is. The high school football season has returned. It's going to be an exciting week of build-up leading into a lot of these games. To help create that excitement, our Shelby County Football Magazine has returned. This is the copy of our overall main cover featuring Evan Smith, the quarterback at Oak Mountain High School. We've also got a special edition for Thompson, Chelsea, and Montevallo. All of those magazines will be handed out at every team's first home game. So for Thompson, that's going to be a week from this Friday. For the rest of those teams, that's going to be this Friday night. We will be handing out both the Oak Mountain overall main cover at teams that didn't have a special cover at the gates this Friday night. The Oak Mountain and Chelsea covers will both be handed out here at Chelsea High School. So make sure you get your hands on one of those. It gets you geared up for this 2021 season. We've got a lot of extra content in there as well. So it just helps create that build-up and excitement level even more for what we can expect this season. And like I said, I expect a lot from a lot of teams this year. Wouldn't be surprised if we have 5-6 teams back in the second round of the postseason. Wouldn't be surprised if we have 3 or 4 make it into the third round this season, which would be absolutely remarkable. So buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. I can't wait to take it all with you. We'll see you all here from Chelsea High School on Friday night for our Facebook Live pregame show. Make sure you tune in as we continue to build that hype. But for now, that's going to do it from here at Chelsea High School.